Once upon a time, long ago in a small community in Jamaica, there lived a woman named Rebecca. She was a young widow who lost her husband to an unknown illness just 6 months after their marriage. Weeks after her husband's passing, Rebecca found herself chased out of her matrimonial home by members of her newly deceased husband's family. They accused her of being the cause of their beloved brother and son's death. With a broken heart, she had no choice but to return home and seek solace with her parents. Weeks went by, and Rebecca's parents encouraged her to move on. Determined to find purpose, she secured a job as a nurse at the community clinic to assist her parents. As she diligently carried out her duties, things began looking up for Rebecca, providing a distraction from the painful memories of her late husband. After some time, Rebecca's parents began to see their daughter happy for the first time in months. Their smiles reflected the joy of knowing she was finding solace, despite the suspicions and gossip surrounding her husband's demise. One day, while coming home from work, Rebecca encountered a young girl named Helen who was stranded and seeking help with transportation to return home to her family. Rebecca approached Helen and inquired about her situation. Helen shared that she had been robbed of the money and items her mother sent her to purchase, leaving her stranded about 4 communities away. Though Rebecca had little, she offered what she could. Realizing it was unsafe for Helen to travel alone at that late hour, Rebecca extended an invitation for her to stay the night at her house. With no transportation available, Helen had no choice but to agree. Unable to contact her mother, she prayed for morning to break so she could head home safely. Upon reaching their destination, Helen's mother, Mrs. Juliet, expressed gratitude to Rebecca for aiding her daughter and ensuring her safe return. The 3 of them chatted, sharing a few laughs as a bond formed through the events of the night. Before long, Helen's brother Maxwell arrived, and Helen introduced Rebecca as the woman who had helped her when she was stranded. They exchanged pleasantries, and Rebecca, mentioning some pending house chores, bid them farewell. Before leaving, she assured Helen that she was welcome to visit anytime and then took her leave. A few months after Maxwell and Helen's initial visit, their presence in Rebecca's life and her family became more frequent. Over time, Maxwell expressed his feelings to Rebecca, confessing his love and desire for her to be his bride. Happily, she accepted his proposal, marking the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. A year into their marriage, Rebecca and Maxwell were expecting their first child. It was a blissful and happy time for their family as they eagerly awaited the arrival of the new addition to their home. One day, while doing dishes, Rebecca went into labor. Her screams caught the attention of Maxwell, who rushed from outside to see what was wrong. Upon realizing that she was in labor, he hurriedly called the local midwife to aid his wife in delivering their baby. After hours of labor, Rebecca's stomach reduced in size, and her pain subsided, yet there was no baby. The midwife, puzzled and confused, closely examined Rebecca, only to realize that there was no baby. Rebecca wasn't pregnant. Maxwell and Rebecca couldn't understand what was happening. Desperately searching for answers, they found no explanation. Determined to seek clarity, they decided to visit the local clinic, where it was confirmed that, as the midwife had said, Rebecca wasn't pregnant. The revelation put a significant strain on Rebecca and Maxwell's marriage. As news spread throughout the community about Rebecca's condition, gossip and speculation began, adding further stress to their relationship. 3 months later, Rebecca found herself pregnant once again. However, when the time for delivery arrived, there was no baby. This proved to be the final straw for Maxwell. Seeking answers, he became increasingly harsh towards Rebecca, and since that day, things were never the same in their lives. Over time, people in the community began to avoid Rebecca and her family. Some suspected that she might be pretending to be pregnant and deceiving her husband, while others believed she was cursed. Fearing the alleged spiritual pregnancy curse, they distanced themselves to avoid becoming victims of the perceived affliction in her family. Rebecca would cry in agony and pain each time her tummy swelled up and then reduced after 9 months. Despite her husband Maxwell distancing himself from her as man and wife, the mysterious cycle continued, her abdomen swelling and then reducing, yet no baby to show for it. Everything had gotten so dire that Maxwell's mother advised him to leave Rebecca, fearing for her son's safety. Despite the counsel, Maxwell refused to abandon his wife, holding on to hope that one day their prayers would be answered. This continued for 6 years with no solution in sight. Rebecca became a mere shadow of herself, wandering aimlessly and praying for an end to her mysterious affliction. Despite moments of doubt, her husband Maxwell stood by her, assuring her that everything would be okay. He tirelessly searched for a solution, but no one seemed to have any remedy for her baffling condition. One day, Rebecca's parents visited her and Maxwell. They witnessed firsthand Rebecca's agony as she went into yet another painful labor, which, once again, resulted in her abdomen shrinking without a baby. The following morning, Rebecca's parents awoke early and requested a private chat with Maxwell, mindful not to disturb Rebecca's sleep. They suggested that Maxwell allow them to take Rebecca back to their house for some time until she recovers. Though signed with sadness, Maxwell agreed, allowing his in-laws to take his wife with them. As the weeks went by, Rebecca started to feel like her old self again, with no protruding tummy. Observing this positive change, her parents concluded that the issue was in Maxwell's house because their daughter's problems resolved weeks after she returned home. Maxwell visited his wife, Rebecca, often and was delighted to see her in good spirits. Despite his inquiries about when she would return home, she consistently avoided providing a direct response. On one of Maxwell's many trips back from visiting his wife, Rebecca, he was stopped by his neighbor Nancy. She inquired about his wife's health, and Maxwell assured her that Rebecca was doing well. Nancy then asked if he wouldn't bring back his wife anytime soon, expressing concern about a married man staying without his wife for an extended period. Maxwell smiled and told Nancy not to be bothered about his wife being away and proceeded to his home. Some weeks later, while at home, Rebecca decided to pay her husband Maxwell a surprise visit. However, immediately upon entering his home, her tummy inflated, and she screamed in pain. The neighbor, Nancy, rushed over, calling out for Maxwell. Upon a closer look, she realized it was Rebecca in distress. A few other neighbors heard Rebecca's screams and rushed over. After realizing it was Rebecca, they all left, including Nancy, stating that they didn't want to be afflicted with her alleged curse. Maxwell got home late that evening from work and found Rebecca on the floor. Shocked, he discovered her there, as she hadn't informed him of her intentions to move back home so soon. Later that night, Rebecca's condition worsened, and her pain became unbearable. Maxwell waited until daybreak and took her back to her parents' home. They were unaware of her intentions to leave without telling them. As they cried, seeing their daughter in such a condition, they wondered why she hadn't listened to their advice. After 6 years of suffering with her condition, news spread about the woman who kept delivering nothing after 9 months of pregnancy. One day, a woman who claimed to have the gift of discernment requested to be brought to where Rebecca lived. She located Rebecca's parents' house and explained that she had seen Rebecca in her dreams, crying for help with a swollen stomach. She conveyed that unless she exposed the person behind Rebecca's predicament, Rebecca will not survive much longer. Rebecca's parents were in shock, as they knew their daughter's issues weren't medical but spiritual. They took the woman to Rebecca's room. Seeing Rebecca lying frail and weak, the strange woman asked if they could take her to Rebecca's husband's house, believing that's where the root of the problem started. They agreed and headed out. After getting to Maxwell's house, they explained things to him, and he agreed to do whatever it takes for his wife to be herself again. Maxwell's mother was invited over, along with Helen, his sister. When everyone was present, the woman introduced herself as a woman of God. She started praying and asked Maxwell some questions. Maxwell was asked about the woman he promised marriage 7 years ago but ended up marrying Rebecca instead. After thinking for a while, he remembered that his mother wanted him to marry his neighbor Nancy. However, after his sister Helen introduced him to Rebecca, he fell in love with her and went ahead to marry her. Maxwell asked the woman what Nancy had to do with Rebecca. Instead of responding, she asked Maxwell to take them to Nancy's house. Immediately after they reached Nancy's house and she opened the door to see Rebecca, she started screaming and attempted to run. The woman of God asked them to hold her. While Nancy screamed in pain on the floor, Rebecca knelt down to hold her. Nancy then screamed, "Don't touch me, don't touch me." The woman of God urged Nancy to confess before it's too late. Nancy started to narrate that she had known Maxwell since childhood. Their parents were best friends. When both she and Maxwell came of age, their parents hoped they would end up together. They went out a few times, and she thought it might lead to marriage. Eventually, she got a job opportunity and moved to the community where Maxwell was living. One day, he told her he had found the woman he wanted to marry, and it was time for her to move on because he didn't love her. He explained that he only took her on 2 dates due to pressure from his mother. Heartbroken, she vowed to deal with any woman Maxwell married after he stopped seeing her. He had told her he couldn't marry her because he didn't love her and wouldn't sacrifice his happiness for his mother's wishes. After Rebecca moved in with Maxwell after their wedding, passing them daily and seeing how happy they were, Nancy wanted them to feel the hurt she felt. She aimed to make them childless and break their marriage apart. After telling her witch doctor her demands, she was warned that the day Rebecca gets deliverance or if she touches her, the affliction would be transferred to her, and she would suffer the same fate. Immediately after confessing her evil deeds, Nancy started screaming in agony as her stomach became swollen. She begged for help and pleaded for forgiveness. Despite the pain, Rebecca forgave her, and shortly after, Nancy passed away. After Nancy's confession, Maxwell's mother apologized to her son and daughter-in-law for her role in their affliction. She acknowledged that if she hadn't pressured Maxwell into dating Nancy, things might have been different. Tearfully, she asked for forgiveness, and both Maxwell and Rebecca graciously forgave her. Rebecca and her family thanked the woman of God, and she was instructed them to undergo a cleanse for 7 days. After 7 days, Rebecca was whole again, and she and Maxwell happily and peacefully returned to their home. A year later, Rebecca delivered a set of healthy twin boys. She and Maxwell continued to live in peace, and as the years went by, their family increased in size. They lived happily ever after. This story teaches us that parents should allow their adult children to make their own choices in the partners they choose. Sometimes, what a parent desires may not always be what's best for their children. It also highlights the importance of letting go and moving on when a particular relationship no longer serves one's well-being, potentially saving a lot of heartbreak. Furthermore, the story suggests that when judgment is clouded by emotions, there's a tendency to make poor decisions that can lead to treachery and resorting to unethical means. The story implies that no wrongdoing goes unpunished, emphasizing the consequences of actions driven by ill intentions. Did you enjoy the story? If you did, please consider liking this video, subscribing, and sharing it. Turn on post notifications and click on all to stay updated. Your support means a lot to me. Thank you for watching.